In the Meno, we find Socrates in conversation with Meno, who is a young aristocrat from Thessaly who is visiting Athens. Meno wants to engage Socrates on a hotly contested topic of the day: can virtue be taught? The dialogue ends up offering a striking set of proposals about what teaching and learning amount to. For example, we get the famous Platonic thesis that all learning is recollection. It also reflects on the difference between knowledge and true belief, and it poses an uncomfortable series of questions about who really has knowledge and who has the credentials to be a teacher. Recall that Socrates in the Apology declared that he has never met anyone who has knowledge about the subjects he inquires into, and he denies that he was ever anybody's teacher. He reiterates these themes here in the Meno, but this time in the context of a theory of teaching, learning, and knowledge. These topics belong in the area of philosophy known as epistemology. That's from the Greek term for knowledge, episteme. Once we get a grasp of the epistemology Socrates is expounding, we'll be in a position to understand more precisely what he means and what he does not mean when he denies that he is a teacher and disavows knowledge of the subjects he inquires into. But before we get to these epistemological matters, let's pay some attention to the question that gets the discussion started: can virtue be taught? What does Meno mean by virtue? Now, as we tend to use the term virtue today, it can be fairly narrow and moralistic, with connotations of self-denial or self-sacrifice. You might say, well, that was very virtuous of you. The way we use it, it invokes qualities that we might admire in others, but does not encompass everything that we might aspire to for ourselves. For example, we might want to be good people, that is, virtuous people, but we might also want to be successful in life. But this narrow conception of what virtue is, the way we tend to use it, is not at all what Meno has in mind. The Greek term translated virtue is arete, which one might also translate excellence or greatness. It encompasses everything you might aspire to yourself, not just what you might admire in others. It's an object of ambition, not just an ideal to which one pays lip service. Be all you can be, or strive for excellence, would be slogans of arete. Now, Plato's Socratic dialogues are full of ambitious young men who are eager to acquire arete. And by arete, they have in mind the qualities of a respected and powerful political leader. They aspire to the status of Themistocles and Pericles. These were revered Athenian statesmen of the early 5th century, under whose leadership Athens first repelled the Persian invasion and then became a wealthy imperial power. The greatness attributed to these political leaders of the past is what seekers after arete want for themselves. So with this understanding of the kind of virtue, or arete, sought by Meno and his contemporaries, we can say, in a more contemporary American idiom, that the seekers after virtue that we find in Plato's dialogues are not like the young people today who want to join the Peace Corps or teach for America, but they're more like those who want to run for president. It's not a life of serving the public or the common good that they aspire to, but rather one of power and leadership. Note that when Socrates pushes Meno to articulate what he thinks virtue consists in, Meno proposes that it's the ability to rule over people. So that's the kind of virtue that Meno aspires to. Now, when Pericles and other revered statesmen of the past are thought of as exemplars of virtue, it is as wise and capable leaders who know how to defend the city, to advance its interests, and to benefit the citizens. All of these things, in fact, are things we look for today in candidates for political office. We may consider this set of qualifications for public office a kind of knowledge or wisdom, and so did Plato's contemporaries. Thus, the question of whether virtue could be taught was, at least in part, the question of how one comes to be as wise as Pericles, or, on a more societal level, how to cultivate this knowledge in the next generation.